Thanks for joining me on another episode of Sets, Streets, and Eats. This is my first episode of the new year. I don't exactly know which order it's going in, but I gotta show you my Christmas gift. It's the Sweet Speedy shirt McDonald's my wife made for me. She always makes me the best hoodies, as you guys well know if you've watched my channel for any length of time. Today, I am in Springfield, Missouri, in front of Steak and Shake. Now this probably doesn't look like your Steak and Shake, and there's a reason for that. This was built in 1962, opened up, it's been running ever since. In 2012, they added it to the National Register of Historic Places, and it is the oldest original operating Steak and Shake left in existence. But Steak and Shake's history started almost 30 years before this restaurant was built. So I'm gonna take you through the whole history, and we're gonna get some delicious steak burgers, and I hope you guys will join me. Let's eat.
More than 70 years in the making, and more than a third pound. Presenting the 1934 Steak Burger. Now you can finish what we started. Only at Steak and Shake.
Now this Steak and Shake sits right on Route 66, which goes right through Springfield, Missouri. Back in the 1930s, when Steak and Shake started, it also sat on Route 66, but several hundred miles north of here in Normal, Illinois. Route 66 was what they called the Mother Road. They still do. It still exists in patches, and this is definitely one of them. But back then, there was so few roads that took you over across multiple states. Almost none. Most roads back then, being the first 30 years of cars, they were regional roads or town roads that they were all built by farmers or whatever. And most of them didn't even go across state lines. You would just get on a whole new set of roads when you went on state lines. So when they built Route 66, it was a huge deal because this was the beginning of interstate travel in the United States. And of course, quickly as Route 66 gained popularity of people using it, businesses and restaurants and gas stations all started opening. And in the early 1930s, a man named Augustus Belt, or as Gus, as his friends knew him as, he and his wife Edith owned just that sort of establishment. They had a combination fried chicken and gas station place called Shell Chicken. I believe Shell was probably the name of the gasoline that he served at his station. But anyway, he called it Shell Chicken. Because so few roads like that existed, many places along the Mother Road would be a combination place of an eatery with gas, a mechanic, basically one-stop shops because people didn't like to stop. And when they did, they wanted their stops to count. So Gus had Shell Chicken, it was going well. Edith would run the restaurant part, he took care of the cars, they had a good arrangement. They would sell chicken dinners for 45 cents with all the trimmings, and you could add on a beer for another 9 cents. This was, of course, long before we had drinking and driving laws in the US. Anyway, but Gus wanted something different. He wanted to have a bit of a different place, still a restaurant, but not chicken. A chicken combination gas station was pretty common back then. So he wanted something a little different. So he went to his bank and got a $300 loan, having to put up his furniture as collateral in his apartment. Got a $300 loan and got rid of the gas part of the station, fixed up the restaurant part, and he opened in 1934 a restaurant called White House Steak and Shake. And Gus opened that restaurant. It right away was very busy, very popular, because he had decided he wanted to serve steak burgers. Now, ground beef in the United States at that time had only been around for 20 or 30 years. People were always very skeptical of it. You were taking a steak, which everybody knew and loved, from a cow, and you were grinding it up and making this other type of thing. People were very skeptical that things could be added to it to take away from the quality of meat. So it wasn't a hugely popular item, even though it was growing very rapidly. But in 1934, when he opened his, he decided, as a marketing gimmick that actually ended up working, he would open the restaurant and then he would take in a whole barrel full of steaks, T-bones, round steaks, sirloins, and he would wheel them right through the restaurant, right in the front door, so that everyone could see it. And then he would get in his open kitchen and he would grind the meat, making it right into the ground meat balls that they would smash into the burgers. And people were able to watch the whole process. And it made a big difference because it led to their first slogan, which is still on the building today: in sight, it must be right. Meaning, if the burger that you're going to eat is always in sight, from the coming in as a steak and being ground down, then it was gonna be right in your mouth, which is where they ended up. And that of course led to also, we protect your health, which the belief was, this is fresh, there's no additives, there's no other preservatives, you're getting this meat ground into a burger and it's delicious and it's good for you. We've since come around on that a little bit, but still, having fresh meat like that is a big deal, so I totally get his meaning, but it worked. Quickly, he had opened up 2 or 3 locations very quickly, and they were all big hits. And I will mention that one other slogan that they had was the Tacoma sack. Now that looks like, I don't know, could be a Native American word. Maybe it means good beef, but it's not. But Gus got the saying from a place in Denver, Colorado called Rocky Belt Burgers. And they had that saying, the Tacoma sack, as well, except that they had dashes in theirs because it was a play off of take home a sack of burgers. Which was kind of a, not rip-off, but a variation of what White Castle had been doing for over 10 years at that point, which was buy and buy the sack. It was a slogan that they had on all of their restaurants. So this was kind of a variation of that. Of course, Gus loved it. He took the dashes out of his, so it made it just one word, Tacoma sack. But that's the origin of why those are on, that word's on all the early Steak and Shakes. Just like if it's in sight, it must be right. In addition to marketing gimmicks of wordplay and whatnot, he also pioneered very fast service. He told his employees the goal was to have a customer order and have their food, eating their burger within 5 minutes, which led to really a customer's entire time in his restaurant to be less than 20 minutes, which was a big deal back then. That was not a very common thing. And it just kept the business moving. It kept the restaurant busy at all times. He just started rapidly growing. He quickly had 3 locations, and then he found out there was a small franchise restaurant chain of several restaurants in Illinois there called The Goalpost that was going out of business, and he bought those and he transferred all of those Goalpost locations into Steak and Shakes. And when he did that, he dropped the name White House from the sign, and it just became Steak and Shake because everybody was already calling it Steak and Shake. And from that point on, there was no more White House in front of the name.
Hey, let's go to Steak and Shake. Let's go to Steak and Shake. Inside it must be right. Inside it must be right. Oh, let's go to Steak and Shake.
It's a meal in itself. Steak and Shake, whether it's a meal or just a snack. Get it quicker and better at Steak and Shake.
Check Steak and Shake's menu. Delicious steak burgers, cheeseburgers, lettuce tomato burgers, baked ham, chili, jumbo shakes.
These and many other taste delights, all prepared in Steak and Shake's spick and span kitchen right before your eyes.
Inside it must be right.
Steak and Shake, where courteous curb waiters deliver your meal in a matter of minutes.
And Steak and Shake protects your health using only choice U.S. government inspected beef. Your absolute guarantee of the finest.
Steak and Shake, specializing in selected foods with a desire to please the most discriminating.
Inside it must be right. Try it tonight. Steak and Shake, a meal in itself.
Let's all go to Steak and Shake. Let's all go to Steak and Shake.
There's one near you.
In 1938, he sold the first franchise and quickly started franchising across Illinois. By 1948, they had worked their way into Missouri and they started franchising and it just kept going. But in 1954, Gus, unfortunately, unexpectedly died of a heart attack. And his wife Edith actually had the funeral at a Steak and Shake, at the place he built and loved. I'll actually put up a picture of that. It's pretty crazy, but he had his funeral in a Steak and Shake. But after that, Edith ran the company from 1954 to 1969, another 15 years. She added many locations, and by 1969, when she decided to sell the company, she was kind of getting into poorer health and wanted to have the company move on to more ambitious hands. But she had grown the company up to 51 locations at that point. So they had definitely taken a toehold there in Illinois, Missouri, and the surrounding states. The company changed hands over the next couple of years until by 1975 it was owned by a company called the Franklin Corporation. They had grown it to over 130 locations by that point, and they moved the company headquarters from Norma, Illinois to Indianapolis, Indiana, which is where the company headquarters still is today.
Most visit this old standby out of habit, when not far away lies a destination offering a far more rewarding experience.
Steak and Shake, famous for steak burgers.
By the late 70s and early 80s, sales had really started to be hurt by all the other franchises that were out there. They weren't keeping up with the competition and their sales had drastically dropped. So the Franklin Company decided to sell off Steak and Shake, and it was purchased by Ed Kelly and Associates. Ed was a huge deal for Steak and Shake. He believed in the brand, he knew how to grow it, and he ran it for the next 20 plus years, growing it by leaps and bounds to hundreds and hundreds of locations nationwide. So much so that in 2003, when Ed died, the company almost immediately took a drastic nosedive. Sales started to plummet, and they struggled for several years in the early 2000s, even at a point they were losing over $100,000 a day as a company. Then in 2008, a man named Sardar Baglari took over the company and immediately dropped the prices, came up with the 4 meals under $4, not gimmick, but price menu, basically a value price menu, and it really changed everything. The company started growing again, it started making profits, the franchisees were happy, and he still runs the company today, even though that growth has definitely leveled off and started to decline again, unfortunately.
In sight, it must be right. Steak and Shake.
Yum! Try some.
Almost everywhere you go these days, you'll find a Steak and Shake, proof of the pudding of how popular Steak and Shake has become.
Steak and Shake, specializing in selected foods that please the most discriminating.
In sight, it must be right. Steak and Shake.
Yum! Try some.
Each week, Steak and Shake uses over 50,000 pounds of choice U.S. government-inspected beef for steak burgers and chili.
It's your absolute guarantee of the finest at Steak and Shake.
Whether it's a meal or just a snack, Steak and Shake does it quicker and better.
Try Steak and Shake's genuine chili, chili mac, or chili 3 ways, fresh daily from Steak and Shake's own kitchens.
In sight, it must be right. Steak and Shake.
Yum! Try some.
So I got the Royal Double Steak Burger, which has the egg on it. Haven't had one of these in a very long time. Very delicious, as usual. My go-to here at Steak and Shake is almost always the Frisco Melt. That's usually my favorite burger. But I was just in the mood for the egg today. Now, up till just a few years ago, most Steak and Shakes, in fact, all Steak and Shakes were just like this one with a full wait staff, bringing food right to your table. But they have since gone the way of most fast food burger places, with the kiosks to order and very few wait staff, if any, in their restaurants. It's also led to a lot of their problems with quality control, and the experience is different. The customer wasn't really included in on that phenomenon, I guess, or that decision, and they've had a hard time adjusting to it. A lot of people have felt like the quality has gone down. I think the quality of the food, some people say it's different. I'm sure it's, had a few changes, but it's still very high quality. I enjoy their food very much when I'm on the road. But yeah, it's still really, really good, but it's cool to be in a Steak and Shake that still has wait staff and still has that full experience, because it's not very common anymore. Back in the 1990s, film critic Roger Ebert, real famous film critic at the time, famously said that he would pick Steak and Shake as his last meal if he was ever on death row. He was a big fan. But Steak and Shake's been around for 90 years now, serving up really the same great tasting burgers as they always have. It's inspired other places, like Danny Meyer grew up in St. Louis eating at Steak and Shake's. It was his favorite food, and he started his own burger joint called Shake Shack. And he's definitely attributed the beginnings of that franchise, or the wanting to do that franchise, to eating a Steak and Shake. So it's definitely been a staple of the American experience for close to a century. During COVID, they really, or just before COVID actually, they started going to this new model of kiosks and no wait staff and all that. And in fact, after COVID, before COVID, all Steak and Shakes were open 24/7. It was always a great place to come at 3 a.m. But after COVID, and since then, a lot of Steak and Shakes have kind of set new hours. I know the one I live near in Paducah, Kentucky, they're only open till 10 p.m. now. And it's kind of a bummer. Steak and Shake, kind of like Waffle House, was always that go-to place after a night out with your friends. It actually led to them creating a secret menu that was only available after midnight. And some places still do it. Some Steak and Shakes still do it. If you go in after midnight, you can order a 7x7 and 7 patties, 7 pieces of cheese. And there's recognition in it for you if you can do it in less than 5 minutes. I've never eaten it myself, but I would like to. At its peak, Steak and Shake had over 600 locations in 28 states and 3 different countries, some in Southern Europe and Middle East. It was a really, really big chain. They have since slid down and declined. They've closed a lot of locations. I think in 2021, they were down to about 550. And then as of last year, in 2023, they were down to under 500. So whether or not the current management can turn it around and get more people in the door and get more franchises to open, they're trying to move to a completely franchise-based restaurant. Right now, most of the Steak and Shakes are corporate owned. About a third of them are franchisees. But they're actually offering an incredible opportunity, probably the cheapest buy-in you'll ever see in any restaurant, and that is you can buy a up-and-going Steak and Shake franchise for $10,000. That's it. And you can run it. Now, there's obviously caveats to that, and the other side of that is you're in for 10 grand, but you have to give the corporation 50% of what you make. Again, low buy-in, but kind of a high cost overall. I don't know how long that's for, but who knows? But either way, I've definitely never heard of a fast food chain having that low of a buy-in. So it's pretty incredible. They're definitely trying to go that route. I don't know if they'll be successful. I enjoy their food. I hope they stick around for many more decades to come. But like I said, they are on the decline. I don't know when that'll stop, but we still have well over 400 restaurants in operation. You're probably still doing pretty good. So I think we'll still see Steak and Shakes many years from now. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed my visit to the oldest operating Steak and Shake and talk about the history of Steak and Shake. I really love this burger franchise. Always have. It's just really good. So I definitely love these old establishments. I love this, still on Route 66, still operating today. The original location's long gone. It's now a pizza place there in Normal, Illinois. But it's cool that some pieces of the old Americana, old franchise, the old chains like this still stick around today. I love finding them. I love visiting them. And I hope you guys do too. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye now.